Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Álvaro Huerta, and I'm here with Salomón Huerta. He's gonna give a talk, or actually it's gonna be more of a dialogue between him and I about the topics of portraiture, identity, and landscape. There's no secret about it. Salomón is actually my brother, and just don't tell the university because it's being paid. No, I'm just kidding. So for me, it's not about inviting him because he's my brother or anything. It's more inviting him because of he's highly accomplished as an artist. So that's who he is. He identifies as an artist. So everything that we talk about, it has to do about his art and his trajectory over the last several decades in terms of producing art at the highest level. Because he's a first generation university student like myself, and because he's a child of immigrants like myself, we feel that a lot of students here at Cal Poly Pomona and beyond can relate to this conversation. So this is the flyer. Before I start asking questions or going through the PowerPoint, I just want to thank the University Library for supporting this event. Also Urban Los Angeles, and the Office of Interdisciplinary Ethnic Studies, Teaching and Scholarship, Cal Poly Pomona. So as I mentioned before, my name is Dr. Álvaro Huerta. I'm an associate professor here at Cal Poly Pomona, Ethnic Studies and Urban Planning. I'm also a fellow at the Harvard Divinity School, and have degrees from UCLA and UC Berkeley. And here, just a few things about Salomón, which was really the whole presentation it's about him and his art. But he too is a first generation, as I mentioned, university student. He attended Pasadena City College. He has an AA. And then he attended ArtCenter School of Design in Pasadena, where he has a BFA. And was it highest honors, or what was that, Salomón?
Yeah, not highest, high honors.
High honors, yeah.
There was one guy ahead of me.
Yeah, it was probably like related to the voting committee or something. So high honors, and then he attended UCLA School of Art, where he received his MFA. So this is the flyer that we produced, thanks to Marilu Salcedo, who's the designer, and also I'd like to thank Chris Soleta, who's also, part of the library and has always been very, very helpful in providing the technical support. So a lot of this is, I'm going to just comment, give a little bit of the background, and then in certain situations, I'll ask Salomón to intervene. So for a lot of us, especially those of us who are of Mexican origin, it all starts, with the family. In the United States, it's all about individualism. But for us, those of us who are of Mexican origin, and we see this with other groups, Chinese, Italians, Irish, very Filipinos, the family is primary, not the individual. So for us, our roots come from Michoacan. And our parents, both of them who passed away, they were born and raised in a small rancho in Michoacan, Sajo Grande. I don't know why they call it Grande, because it's really small. And we're talking like 1930s, 40s, 50s. And during this time period, unfortunately, the Huertas, our family, they were engaged in a family feud. So there was a lot of violence, a lot of poverty during that time. And I say this because a lot of times, in the case of Salomón and myself, sometimes people will say things like, oh, you guys are privileged, or you have all this status, or what have you, or you're sellouts, or whatever, all these false accusations. And what I always say is, well, you don't know where we come from. So whatever we've accomplished in life is one thing, but where we come from is another thing. So our roots are from Mexico. Actually, Salomón was born in Tijuana. And our family experienced poverty and violence growing up. Like my father was shot at, for example. He shot people. My mother was, she was almost abducted, robar. And the guy shot at her, but he hit her with a rock and he couldn't see. So she survived. We come from a large Mexican family. We have like 11 aunts and uncles, 10 first cousins. No, each uncle has like 10 kids. We have like 100 first cousins. We have like 8 siblings. So we come from that background of struggle and of trauma, and we've been able to overcome it, but at the same time, it's still with us today. So this is a beautiful photograph of our parents, and as you can see, the one with put on the mic. The one with my father, or our father, actually Salomón. So Salomón the artist is a junior. This is our father, Salomón Huerta. As you can see, he's carrying a gun. It's not that my father was violent. It's just that at the time where he grew up, there was no like police or anything like that. So they were police themselves. They had to take care of themselves in terms of people stealing their crops, the livestock, or just engaging in violence. This was taken in 1954 in Michoacán. And that's my mother here, or our mother. So these are two beautiful, one watercolor and one painting. The left, obviously, is my father, Salomón Huerta. And on the right is my mother, Carmen Mejia Huerta. So Salomón, can you comment a little bit about that? And I'm just going to put on my mics on these two paintings.
No, I just did the watercolor my dad because you wanted that.
I think I stole you for it.
That was taken from a photograph that we have of him. And then I don't know where I got the photograph of our mother. I redid the dress to look a little designed to kind of fit the painting. So that's an oil painting. I think the watercolor is like 14 by 16, and then the painting is like 12 by 12.
Why do you use red in the background?
That's just more to give it contrast, like so that she can pop because her eyes are green. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to complement her eyes, so when you see the painting in person, you can see that the eyes really pop out,
Well, yeah, that's good to know. People can hear me, right? Because I have the headphones on. So for us, in terms of, I only speak about the Mexican people because that's where I come from, and that's my expertise. So it's not like I'm not interested in other Latina groups. But one thing I want to stress is that as Mexicans, we cannot divide ourselves based on skin color. We cannot say, oh, she's light skinned, therefore she's privileged, because we're Mexicans and we're oppressed, and our story has been one of struggle. So my mother, for example, was light skinned. She's been she passed away now, but all her life, and green eyes, light skin, so she could pass as white. But she was a domestic worker. So it's not, that skin color didn't give her any privilege. But my brother too, Noel Huerta, was also light skinned, had similar eyes like her. And then there's a good looking photograph of my father. So when our family, we struggled, or they struggled, because we weren't alive in the 30s, 40s, especially in the 40s and 50s. Like they were born like in the 30s, but in the 40s and 50s, there was a family feud. They killed my uncle, mi tío Pascual, mi tío Javier, like killed 10 of them. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of violence, taking place. And once they killed my uncle, in the 60s, early 60s, 50s, early 60s, our grandfather, who was the patriarch, Abuelo Martin, he took the family to Tijuana, and then the other family fled to Morelia, and then some stayed in the rancho. So in the 60s, this is where our family, in terms of our extended, or many of our extended family settled there. And this is a slum, people. There's no running water, or the water there's contaminated. There's a bathroom and it's an outhouse. There's no paved roads. This is how we grew up. This is like dirt poor. And there's a picture of us. I mean, this is the housing, and all our uncles and aunts, they all had their families. So we grew up with our cousins. So our cousins were like our siblings. So the picture on the right, the tall one is Salomón, fascination with guns, and he'll talk a little bit about that in his paintings. And the good looking one is, the little one is me, Álvaro. So this is who we are. This is where we come from. And unfortunately, when we're growing up in East LA, as older kids, a lot of times we internalize that racism. Oh, you're a TJ or blah, blah, blah. And you feel ashamed, but now I'm proud to be from Tijuana, or have those connections to Tijuana, even though I was born here in California. But I'm proud of that. The people of Tijuana, very vibrant people, very beautiful, innovative people. So that's kind of where we come from. And we're talking 1960s, late 60s for Salomón and myself, mid to late 60s when we were born. And in the 70s, we settled, or our family settled migrated to the United States and settled in Hollywood. And like I said, when I say family, it's not like mom, pop, and 2.5 kids and a dog spot. We're talking uncles and aunts and cousins. So we lived in this house, and there was like 30 people living at one time or another. Like a 3-story craftsman home. There was a basement, and there was an attic. And one of our uncles, I'm not going to say his name, but actually he's passed away now, Tío Javier. He was a human smuggler. So this was like a human smuggling operation. And as kids, Salomón and myself and my cousin, our cousins Chato, Maria, our tia Yaya would say, ve darles comer a los pollos. So they would literally lock up, the migrants, they refer to them as pollos, and the coyotes, my uncle, he's a coyote. Like a movie here, people. Somebody has to pick this up. And it was a human smuggling ring operating out of this house, where people from Mexico were brought, and then my sisters and cousins and the older ones would send them to different locations throughout Los Angeles County and the state, and so give them to their families, and then they have to pay, the remaining of the funds. So because of the overcrowdedness and just everybody there is Huerta, and actually we brought in people who are not Huerta. My mother decided that she wanted to leave, and so we ended up going to East LA, to the projects. And the thing about the projects, if you don't understand the projects, if you didn't come from the projects, you will never understand it. So now that we're here, Salomón, what was your first impression? Because I remember you were confused about the age. So I was 6 years old when we moved in, and you were 8. So what was your first impression when we entered the projects in the mid 70s, early to mid 70s, around there?
No, at first I liked it because there was a lot of kids, So at first it was a lot of fun, and then little by little you start to see what it really was, and you got an idea that it was a really bad place, But everyone has different, because I know ex-gang members that they had good times living in the projects, maybe because they were the problem. But for me, it was more about how to avoid harassment, or how to avoid dealing with situations that are violent,
Right.
Because I just wanted to have fun and be with my friends and play basketball.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you say bad, bad means there were drugs, PCP in particular. There was drugs, there was gangs, gang violence, the main gang, Big Hazard. Now, the thing with the gang, we didn't fear the gang though, because the gang, we grew up with them. They were our friends. There was always like bullies and everything, like in Murchison and others. But other than that, we grew up with them. So it's not like they were bad and we were good. They were part of our community. But there was a lot of hopelessness. There was prostitution. A lot of people went in and out of jail. A lot of our friends died, got killed, overdosed. So this is what I mean about, like, if you didn't grow up in housing projects, you really do not know what it's like, right? So you have to experience it to know it. And I say that to people because a lot of times when people try to bully me or tell me things, I say, look, you don't know where I came from, what I overcame to get to where I'm at. So you better, sit down here, because this is not a joke. But for us, at least, given the situation, we made the best out of it, and we're still connected with a lot of people there. So I think it was 1992, the sheriffs, in addition to the violence within the gang, actually there was violence, but it was really controlled because the neighborhood was controlled by Big Hazard, and all of the members were our friends, so we didn't really have a problem with them. It was more like when they had a problem with outside gangs like Lincoln Heights and Clover and other gangs. And the biggest, well, there's 3 other gangs that are part of this neighborhood. There's one, the Housing Authority, that's a gang. The LAPD, that's a big gang, and then the sheriffs. And this is a mural that I think it was 1992 that the sheriffs or the cops killed Smokey, who was unarmed. So what happened with this mural? How was your role in doing this mural in honor of Smokey, who was a childhood friend of our brothers?
No, well, I got asked to do the portrait and to help out. Joe Rodriguez made this design. So my job was just to do the portrait. And the reason why it looks the way it looks, all faded, is because it wasn't properly done. We use like house paint. We use house paint. And on top of that, they didn't put a protective layer on, like a clear, so that the paint cannot fade, with the sun. So my job was just to do the portrait, and it took us a year because we were only working on it every Sunday. But I wasn't getting paid, so I would just, and it wasn't every Sunday. It was maybe a couple of Sundays a month,
Yeah, definitely.
So it was volunteer for me.
Right, and in my homeboy, one of the guys that I grew up with, one of my best friends, Javier Morales, he's the one that he penned the poem for Smokey, and then the neighborhood kids also helped out. So you were directing them and helping them with that. So both you and I, we attended public schooling. It wasn't the best. It was actually pretty bad. The only reason I went to university, I started UCLA in 1985. I was a math major. And you ended up going to, Pasadena City College, and the skill that you had was art. So how did art help you, because you've been painting since elementary school. I remember you had a painting at Murchison Elementary School. You had a competition that Jose beat you. I think he did Star Wars, and then he did Battlestar Galactica, but you won. I thought yours was better, but he beat you. But I think it was rigged.
Wow.
So we didn't learn anything in LAUSD. So once you got to Pasadena City College, what did you learn there in terms of like helping you get a career going?
Well, I was doing art on the side. It wasn't something that I was thinking about making as a career. But my teachers there were directing me towards illustration. and they were saying go to Art Center, because at the time, I don't know where it ranks right now, but at the time Art Center was the best design school like in the world, for automotive and illustration and graphic design. So back then it was just the hill on the campus, like what that photo you're seeing right now. But now they have about 1, 2, 3, like 3 other campuses on South Pasadena. But I liked it when it was on the hill only, because it was very like intense. They were very selective on who they were going to let in. And it was really intense. And I chose to go there because I really felt that I was not good at anything else. So this was the only thing that I was good at, making art, and my teachers recommended I go there. And I got in. I got into Art Center. In the beginning, I paid a couple of semesters, then I applied for a scholarship, and then I got a full ride.
So what you come from the projects, obviously, and given that we were on welfare, I forgot to mention that part. Small detail: we were on welfare at the time. We're there for like 10 years. Food stamps, Medi-Cal, and Art Center actually is still top. I mean, one of the biggest, one of the major designers of Tesla, he quit, but one of the big name designers of Tesla graduated from Art Center. So when you were there, you're a kid from the projects. How did you navigate the system in terms of the money? I mean,
well, like I said, I had a scholarship, so that paid for the tuition.
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever money I can get outside of the school, I was buying supplies, but I would buy the minimum. Like if they would say, you need 4 brushes for this class, I just would buy 3 that will help me get through the class, and I will use those brushes for the other classes. I had to be very resourceful with everything, all my materials and everything. And then I literally made it on $1 a day. I would order, the cafeteria was all Mexican, so they were working there. So I would order a bowl of rice, and I would tell the guys, can you fill it up with some carne asada and then cover it up with rice? So I just paid for the rice. So it was $1. And while I was in line, I would drink some orange juice and eat a banana. And by the time I got to pay, I would only pay for the rice. But it was so crowded that you can get away with stuff like that. But I'm not exaggerating when I said $1 a day, And then towards the end, I was selling my art, so I was able to kind of eat normal and stuff like that.
Was part of the hustle. It's part of the hustle of the streets. Like 50 Cent, we're like 50 Cent, but not that buffed. When you can hustle in the streets, you can hustle anywhere. So that, I think that's something that we have to promote is that trait that comes out of people out of struggle. So you go to PCC, Pasadena City College, and a lot of our students at Cal Poly Pomona are transfer students. You get into a great design school. And then how was it that from Art Center, I know it took a little bit of time, but there was a little bit of a break in between. But how was your experience when you ended up getting accepted to art school at UCLA? What can you say about that?
UCLA was fun because they had an art program that was like some of the best teachers in the world, that they had at the time. They have an art program within the university, and it's a high-end art program. So what's really good for me is that I was very naive because I was coming from illustration, and I didn't know nothing about fine art. So here I am interacting with the high-profile teachers in the art world that were also part of the art world, and I didn't know who they were. So I was just talking to them like the way I would talk to anyone else. So I had a good experience. By the time I found out who they were, I was already friends with them, or I was already like in a good relationship with them. So, and then I just lay back and just listen. I basically stopped talking. I just started to listen to what they had to say, But it was a really good experience, and I'm happy I went there because I wanted to make art that was more universal and less about just our community,
Right, definitely. So I'm gonna show 3 paintings, and of all I'm looking at these paintings in terms of different themes of series of artwork that Salomón has produced. So it's not comprehensive. It's not trying to cover everything. It's just some examples, because his career, we're talking, it extends we're like over 30 years now. So for me, when I look at these 2 paintings, these are our sister's home, and so we have 3 sisters, older sisters, Catalina, Ofelia, and Soledad, or Chole, and then we have Rosa as their other sister, younger sister. And whenever people, I mean, you were also accused at one time, like you were copying certain artists that paint gang members and all that. All these haters, it's incredible how many haters we have. And what they don't know is that these are not objects that you're painting. These are our friends. We grew up with them. This part of our family, extended family. So they better back off too. Just sit down, like Kendrick Lamar says. And to me, when I see the way the homies are portrayed, and this goes for homegirls and homeboys, they're portrayed as killers, savages, and people that should be locked up, and blah blah blah. But for me, I see that these paintings, the way you portray them in a very humanistic way, but in a very also like a regal way. If we look at the study of art history, like the masters and the Renaissance during in Europe, the people that were painted, by these masters were part of the elite. They were part of, like, they were royalty. They were commissioned to paint, and they wouldn't really paint the peasants or the working class. So in this case, how is it that you decided to tap into painting the homies, let's say?
No, wow.
Talking about these 2 paintings here.
What happened is, in ArtCenter, these are from '92. In ArtCenter, a teacher, Pierre Picot, told me, why don't you paint people from your neighborhood? But he didn't know where I live. He didn't know where I came from. So I said, okay. So I did these paintings of our friends, the gang members, and other paintings. And they're like, how do you know these people? I go, what do you mean? They're people I've grown up with. They're my neighbors, they're my friends. So that's where this came from. And if anyone inspired me to pursue art, were like the murals of the LA streetscapers, like Wayne Haley, mainly Wayne Haley, also David Poteo and Paul Poteo, who was not the streetscaper but on his own. But yeah, so I did the gang members just to document what I can relate to.
And this is it's more contemporary, but it's still along the same themes. I'm not looking at it chronologically. I'm looking at it more like theme-wise. So can you talk a little bit about so the first one, that was our neighbor, that was Sniper, and his girlfriend at the time. And here we have on the left, we have Grumpy and Happy. Can you talk a little bit about this one?
No, wow. The gallery, my gallery, Harper's Gallery, that's based in Melrose, and they have 2 galleries in New York and Chelsea, and one at the Uptown, and then in the Hamptons. They saw I did a couple of these paintings that I was just doing it for myself. I wanted to see how they would look, me looking back, 30 years or whatever it is, 24 years. So I made the paintings and they saw them. They said, can we do a show of these paintings at the Hamptons? And I'm like, are you serious?
Mhm.
Yeah, I go, oh my God, you gotta be kidding. So they go, no, we're serious. I said, all right. So I did it. And I made, I don't know, about 17 paintings. And they were shown at the Hamptons, and Ana Morales, who is now my wife, we went to the Hamptons, and that was an experience. Going to the Hamptons was a very surreal experience. Like having the paintings there was cool. I don't think it will ever be done again, but just being there was very surreal. So it was a good experience. I'm happy. I would not go back, but I'm happy that I went.
Yeah, if you go back, you'll bump into Barack and Oprah. So this is part of that series, and Siri, I think I'm talking to her. The in this photo, one thing that both you and I, we were bused to an all-white school, junior high school, is Mount Gleason Junior High. It is the first time we experienced racism. It was like little MAGA kids, they were like, these guys are little race, throwing rocks at our bus and everything. And I remember this one white girl said to me, he goes, well, we really don't like you guys, but we like the way you dress and just your attitude and everything. So to me, when I see this painting, can you talk to a little bit about just like the pose, just like the attitude? And I'm not saying attitude in a negative way, but it's like the pride. What is that about, people that come from the streets, like the pride that they show, regardless whether they have money or not, it doesn't matter, like don't mess with me type of deal. Like, what is it about that? In the way you're
for
portraying?
me, I just wanted to capture the model's essence. And I was looking at the paintings I love this one painter, Edward Manet, and when I look, and I like how he documented his friends and people that his circle of friends. So these women, like all of the male gang members were taken from photos that I took. And then all of the women, the majority were made up. I made them up. Like I would get something from the internet and then tweak it a lot till it became my image. They were made up because I didn't have photos from back then. And they were more like me focusing on these women that in the summer, during the summer jobs, when we would go for the free lunches, they were really nice to us. So it was more me capturing that, of like how proud they were and like being who they were,
Right, definitely. So when it comes to like in terms of scholars and academics, like my area, one of the things that they talk about is like when someone's going to do a dissertation, like I mentioned before, I went to Berkeley and studying regional planning, and anytime you do a dissertation, I was like at the highest level. And I say that with pride because I'm a Mexican, like I'm from the projects. So I was just like the only one, I think, out of the entire history of that program. Is they always talk about when you do a dissertation, like what's your contribution, like your contribution to the literature. And a lot of people don't get it because they don't understand. And in the art world, one of the problems that I see for like there's like a million artists, but if every artist is just reproducing the same thing, they're not contributing anything new. Now, this is me, and then probably people say I'm biased, and the fact that you're giving me money on the side for me to say good things about you, it doesn't help. But as far as I'm concerned, in the history of portraiture that goes way back, hundreds, if not thousands of years, your contribution has been to you flipped a portraiture, and someone else commented, so I'm not the only one. I know a little bit about art history. You literally flipped portraiture on his back. And because of that contribution of your work, you were invited at the time that these paintings came out to the Whitney Biennial, where every year in New York, they invite like 2 artists from each state to represent. So can you talk a little bit about that contribution, and how is it that kind of took you from just an average artist like everybody else, and then just took you to a different level?
Well, when I chose to go to UCLA, it's because I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to do something to get to a bigger audience. Because
now, for the audience, this is a painting. This is not a photograph. But go ahead.
Yeah. So
like, how did you come up with this idea, like, to start painting back of the heads? How did that come about? Like, was it like all of a sudden?
So what happened is I was looking for a way to do the portrait in a whole different manner, and I came up with this idea of turning the head around. I first started with a 3/4 view, and then it didn't work for what I was looking for. So then I turned it all the way from behind. I wanted to do something that people can look at it and not, them to critique the painting and not say, oh, that was done by a Chicano or Mexican artist. I wanted them to look at the work and not focus on who it was done by. And by doing that, I got the attention of a lot of people, and my career took off, So these are, there are models that I will find, I would go to parks, or I would go to Venice, like Santa Monica, I would go to Hollywood, and I would look for men and women who has shaved heads. And I chose shaved heads because I wanted something that can be neutral, that it can be a male. Well, that has some ambiguity. These are obvious that they're males, but there's others that you really don't know if they're female or male.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
And they're 12 by 11 3/4 oil on canvas.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, this is not like an exhaustive presentation. To do that, we need like 8 hours. There was a lot of paintings that I excluded due to time. That you had full figures, like from their back, and then you had people sitting down. So you had to.
So after I did the heads, I said to myself, what else could I do? What else could I do that I can stay within the same range of what I'm working on? So I did the full figure. Like size of a door. So these are 12 and 11 by 3/4. The standing figures from behind were like 74 by 33, around there, size of a door. And everything went very well, like everything took off, everything was amazing. And I got to show with Larry Gagosian, who is like the biggest art gallery like in the art world, and still to this day they're the biggest art gallery in the art world.
Yeah.
And I had a show in London, and it sold out, and I came out like in all these publications, and it was amazing, like the attention and support that I got.
Also in Italy, right? You had a show in Italy too.
And the show in Italy, Verona.
So there's a lot of artists and a lot of musicians that are like one-hit wonders, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like they like Chubby Checker. I think he only has that one hit, like the twist, and then he did the twist again. It's like, come on, Chubby. But you were able to reinvent yourself, which is very difficult. because people want you to keep doing the back of the heads and back of the heads over and over. So can you talk to a little bit about how did this idea of painting houses, how did that come about?
I wanted to make something that was not a portrait, but that can be a partner that in a show can companion the portrait. So I came up with these houses because from the beginning, I wanted to make the jails and paint them kind of abstract, like in the middle of abstraction and realism, like these houses. But when I went to go look at the jails, I went to the Compton jail, went to, the one here in downtown, and I couldn't come up with something that was interesting. But when I was in Compton, or excuse me, I forgot what area that was, Crenshaw, I don't know what area it was. I saw these houses, excuse me, that were near the jail, and they got my attention. So these houses are houses that I invented out of those houses that were near the jail, And my whole idea is just to create something that can companion the back of the head and standing figure. But I'm not really thinking about nothing else when I was doing that.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to another theme, and obviously within the different art series, let's call it, that you've done, you have some that are more obviously you have more like favorite this or that. So it's not like for me ranking which one is better or not. So I just want to talk a little bit about just the different themes and what influenced you on that. So the next one is the luchadores. For those of you who don't speak Spanish, is luchadores. So how did that come about? You started painting these luchadores or Mexican.
This is like the wrestlers were like a continuation from the back of the head. I wanted to paint another portrait that was more abstract. So I started with the wrestlers, but I never really resolved them. This is where I ended up. Like my dealer at the time, Patrick Painter, go, let's have a show. And I said to him, I want to manipulate them more. I want to play with the masks more and make it more abstract. He goes, no, let's just show them the way they are now. So we had the show at Patrick Painter in like 2008. And it did pretty good. I was happy with the support, and we did some bronze mask of the mask, where I got the mask and I took it to a finery, and they did a bronze of the mask. That was fun. But maybe later I will go back into these wrestlers, because I still want to play with some form of abstraction. Like, I love abstract art. I just wish I understood that language a little more, but I don't. But the idea was to make these paintings very abstract, where you see the mask and you see the face underneath the mask, but you really didn't know what was going on. So this is something that I have to revisit and play with a little more.
So a lot of times when you're interviewed, the people that are interviewing you really don't know anything. So they don't know how to ask questions because they don't know anything about your background. The art critics do, because they know the history of art, like Pedro and others at Night at L.A. Times. So those art critics are really good at the art aspect of it. But what is your connection, like, from a personal perspective to luchadores? Like, where does that go back in your own personal life?
Well, with every Mexican Chicano kid has grown up with the wrestlers like El Santos and here Blue Demon. So I mean, I remember being 7, 6 years old, 5 years old, and having the little wrestlers that I would play with them. So my whole thing is how to make art out of things that I grew up with or that I can relate to, you know, how to bring that into the mainstream art world. And I've been able to do it with some of my work. And I'm still to this day trying to figure out how can I tweak the gang members so that people are more open to looking at them. How can I paint these wrestlers a little more abstract so that I can have a different conversation about them? So a lot of, you know, some ideas take a long time to develop. They don't develop overnight, you know.
Well, what about the color composition? This is just the use of pink and I mean, just looking at it, one doesn't have to know anything about luchadores except for the movie Nacho Libre. So if you look at it, just the colors are very attractive. You know, how is it that you
No,
select certain
I
colors?
get most of my colors from fashion magazines. I like the color palettes that the fashion magazine uses. I like how they create. I think the best color palettes are created in fashion magazine. Like I see better color combinations, the way they use color. I see that better in the fashion magazines than I see any other artists, you know, try to do that. So
Right.
so I look at those magazines just to look at the colors, to get some ideas, and I look at palettes and I use them.
Well, that's great. So originally when I shared a slide with you, I didn't include the boxers, but I decided just to include two. So let's just talk a little bit about the boxers. There's actually more paintings. So for every series, it's like 10 or 20 or more. But like I said, I'm only selecting two or three at the most. So talk to me about, or talk to us, because we're recording this. That's the only way we're going to pay you. Well, I'm not going to pay you, the university is why did you decide to paint boxers? I mean, where did that come from?
You know, anything goes in the art world, anything goes, and you really don't know what's gonna do well or what's not gonna do well. No one really knows, I think. And once again, I try to make art out of my experience and things that I can relate to. So Muhammad Ali, he's an American icon. We grew up with Ali, you know, seeing the fights towards the end of his career. And I just wanted to see how can I paint him where I can, so that you see more than Ali, you see something else. And the fighters is also another area where I have to explore and see how I can make it so that people are more interested in wanting to look at them. What I've learned is that you know, like if you depict it in a way where you're able to get people's attention, then they're willing to look at whatever it is that you're painting, you know.
Right, definitely. So the first one is it's for people,
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali, for the younger people that don't know who he is Muhammad Ali is the greatest boxer of all time. Passed away. I think he had Parkinson's, or yeah, I think Parkinson's, tragically passed away with that illness. But growing up, Salomón and I would watch, I think we watched, and I think it was 1979 when Larry Holmes beat Muhammad Ali. I think it was an ABC Sports. And so we've been very fascinated with boxing since then, and then also now with the UFC, with MMA. In terms of the sport, like, because when you grow up in the projects, there's only so many things you can do. You know, either you're in the gang and you're doing gang things, gang activities. It's kind of like the Girl Scouts. Go do your gang activities, or you're into sports, or you're into rock or whatever, or drugs like smoking out. So we were into sports. We played basketball, baseball, all these different sports. Not necessarily boxing, but that's something we like to watch. So another thing, man, and this one, what I've noticed with people is that a lot of times when they see something, they have an impression that's biased. And when we give a little bit of a background, because throughout the last 30 years, with Salomón, we've always helped each other. So I've always encouraged them to kind of give people a little bit of background information so they don't think that we're promoting violence, for example, or what have you. So you did an amazing series of guns. And on the surface, people think, oh, this guy's promoting gun violence and all that. So can you talk to us a little bit about, where this idea comes from?
No, well, like our dad, he had a gun that he carried for protection at 38, and we still have the gun. That's like one of the only things he left behind. So from the age of 9 to 16, he would ask me to bring him things like a glass of milk, glass of water, or bread, or banana, and other stuff. And I would place what he wanted on the night table near the gun. Because we grew up with the gun, I never like, oh my God, why is the gun out? Why is the gun there? No, it was like whatever. It was just an object. It was something that became part of our upbringing, and I made no thing about it. I know it was his gun, and I knew not to play with it, or to basically just like don't touch it or whatever. So these gun paintings are from that memory of taking snacks to my dad. So the show in LA that I had with Lori Furstenberg, it did pretty good, but we got a lot of like negative feedback, like the collectors didn't want to have a painting of the gun in their house and this and that. But the same body of work in New York did very well. It sold out, and it got a lot of support from really good collectors and curators. So it's interesting how in LA it's something that people don't welcome, but in other parts of the world, like New York, where a lot of the viewers were European, because a lot of the collectors that bought the work were European, they show me who bought the work, and they were more open to the work.
Yeah, and I think once you give that background story and you have on social media, then people get it. It's okay, I understand. It's not about, because we know that in the United States, especially with the Republicans and the NRA, they have no problem with all this gun violence taking place and making money off it. But this is not really about that, because our father carried a gun, but he didn't carry it because he was violent. It was more like out of self-defense, given that we were in the projects. And then given how he grew up, right, in the rancho in Michoacan, where everybody had guns, everybody had to protect themselves because they had to protect their livestock, their crops. And in the case, like I mentioned in the beginning with my mother, or our mother, in Mexico, they call it robar, la querían robar. They wanted to abduct her. She was 13 and the abductor was like 18 or something like that. Estaba feo el cabrón también. He was an ugly dude. And, but even though my mom got shot at, even later in life when she was, very ill, like she would like to tell that story. And I would say, oh, tell me that story about when Hilario, wanted to abduct you and you got away, and then she would kind of play it out. So a lot of it is about our history. This is who we are. This is where we come from. We come from violence, we come from poverty, and we come from darkness. But out of that darkness, we preach lightness. We preach peace and nonviolence, right? Whether it's in Gaza or anywhere else in the world. So for us, it's about peace. It's about promoting art, and at the end of the day, it's about educating people, and how some of us grew up in a certain way,
And that if you don't come from that experience, then you would never understand. So you'd be very judgmental because you're looking at things from a very privileged point of view. So for us, when things happen, like it doesn't really faze us because we've been through too much. Someone asked a question in the Q&A, given that shared his own history with trauma and violence. So have you used art in a way to kind of channel that in a positive way, in terms of some of the violence you experienced?
No, well, all my art, the majority of it, except the back of the heads and the houses, the majority of the work is kind of like therapy in a way,
Yeah.
It's kind of like making peace with the past. Like you revisit it, you revisit something that wasn't really a happy time, and you paint it with more beauty, and you show it in a really beautiful place, and you make money, and with that money, you can travel and do fun things,
Yeah. Which brings me to another point. A lot of people, they romanticize poverty. Like when you come from poverty, and we're not talking poverty, we're talking like abject poverty. Like we were one level above homelessness. Like we were right there, and then homelessness is right there, like right next. We could just see it, like it's right there. So there's nothing romantic about being poor. There's nothing romantic about it. Even like we watched Michael Jordan and we watched Kobe Bryant, we watched Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Dr. J, and it's like, oh, that's great. And then they have these sneakers, and you're in the projects, but they cost $50, and we get our Domingo, our allowance is 25 cents a week. That's how much our dad was giving us. Thanks a lot, Dad. Thanks for being supportive. Like, right. So you aspire to something you cannot get. And then that's why sometimes people resort to illegal activity to get that, right? But it's like there's these things that are fetishes that are like, hey, by the way, these Jordans cost $100, and then so kids are killing each other for those Jordans. But we have to know why, like the why behind it, and to understand and to deal with it. So moving along, and this is kind of our last two paintings that I want to share. We have about 10 minutes. So today, you've been working on, or recently, you've been working on a series of pool paintings that are going to be part of your show at Harper's Chelsea. I think it's 512 in New York, at the end of the month. So can you talk a little bit about these pool paintings and where they come from? Because even when we originally posted on social media, it was like, these are beautiful. But people, like I said, it's like, what is he romanticizing? And that's not poverty, but like the elite. Like, where did this idea of pools and also the landscape come from?
Well, I wanted to paint something. I like to challenge myself, and I wanted to paint something that was not a portrait, didn't have a figure, and I can be very painterly, like kind of like abstract. If you look close at these paintings, they're very abstract. Like you see them in person, they're like one or two strokes, and they're very painterly and very textured, a lot of paint. So I was thinking about my first experience when our dad would take us to Malibu we were like,
I was 13, you were 15.
Yeah, he would take us to be day laborers where we'll wait at a gas station, and then these wealthy people will come around the gas station and pick individuals. So I want you, and then you go to their house, we'll do whatever they wanted to do around their house. And my first experience to seeing a swimming pool was back then, and my thinking about it, I was thinking about how it was like a big sculpture, like a big piece of art for me, because it was, for me, it was just something to look at, because I don't know how to swim. And then I also had an idea like, oh, you know, I can drown in this thing because I don't know how to swim. So I was like just caught at awe with the beauty of it. And these paintings are mainly about me looking back and reimagining some of these swimming pools, but a lot of them I just made them up. I just made them up out of what is an ideal swimming pool for me, you know. I mean, I really don't want one because I don't even know how to swim, but it's more something that I wanted to paint.
Yeah, you have to wear those little things the kids wear. Yeah, I don't know how to swim either. That's why we never went to Lincoln Park. It was a nickel. So we're just gonna give me like literally 1 minute response per each. What is your process? What is your art process? Like when you paint, what is your process or your?
No, my process is like I have ideas of things that I want to paint, and I make sketches, take photographs. I use a projector to project mostly portraits. If it's a non-portrait, then I just freehand it like this. The swimming pools, I freehand them. They were all freehanded. We're just using a ruler, but mainly it was all freehand. What do you call it? Yeah, so my process is just to make a sketch, take a photo, and then start painting from there.
So in a previous interview, not as enlightening as this one, you know, you talked about non-attachment. That's one of your practice. What does that mean? Like when you say non-attachment?
No, for me, I don't get like if I paint something and it's not exactly what I want, I start over. I just like erase it, you know. I don't want to say destroy, but I just erase it and start over. So how I'm able to do that is I practice not getting attached to the work or not really getting attached to things, you know, and I do that with food. There's a lot of food that I would love to have like on a daily basis, but I know it's not good for me. So I the same practice that I put down for my art, I put it for the food so that I can let the food go and just focus on what's good for me. So it's more of that. It's just like not being attached to things.
Is that part of the Buddhism philosophy, or is that Zen Buddhism? Where does that come from?
I got it from yoga, so I really don't know exactly if it came from Buddha.
Yoga. Okay, okay, yoga then. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, wow. A long time ago, it wasn't. I can't say not long ago, but a long time ago. I forget the year. I think it's David Pago, no? Pago? What?
David Pago.
David Pago interviewed you. It was part of the Zócalo in downtown LA. They actually didn't want to let me in because I got there late. Like, hey, it's my brother. Let me in. It was a brilliant talk, not as good as this one, but it was a brilliant talk. And he's always been really great in terms of critiquing your work. He's an art critic. And the theme of it was let everything burn. And then you did a book on that. So can you talk a little bit about let's just call everything process here, your process of burning or destroying artwork that you're not satisfied with?
I don't burn it. I just you know, it's basically editing. You know, when you write a paper, you know, you go over it and you start to take things out to make the paper more complete or more useful to what you want. So for me, like on Instagram, I posted 3 paintings that didn't make the cut for my show that's in February 22nd this month of swimming pools. And if I'm not happy with them and I'm not going to show them, I'm not going to keep them. I'm not going to store them. Hope one day in the future I'm going to like them. If I don't like them, I'm very clear that I don't want to be around them anymore. So I just let them go. I don't destroy them with joy or anger. I just erase them and start over.
And I think that's what makes you not a good artist, a great artist. Once again, I say this because you're gonna take me out to dinner, but not King Taco, because it is that you're not willing to sell art just to sell it, like just to make a buck. Like if it's something you don't want out there in the universe, you're just gonna destroy it. So even if somebody is willing to pay for it because they can't see what you see, they don't have that trained eye in terms of technique and everything that goes with the process of making art. So you're just not willing to do that. Because a lot of people just put out, and we see this with artists, with musicians and actors, they're in terrible movies. And the greatest actors of all time, like Marlon Brando and Robert De Niro, you see them like, why are they taking that role, right? Because it's all about money. We're about wrapping up a little here. So what would you say to yourself, what would you say to your, and this is not an original question, to your 20-year-old self, or let's say when you were at Pasadena City College, you were probably like 24 around there, or 22. So what would you say now, given your age and to that young Mexican-American kid back in the day?
Well, I was very insecure, even though I graduated with high honors, like only one person ahead of me. I was still very insecure. So I wish I would have believed in myself and would have been confident,
But I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm rarely wrong, but did that like insecurity force you to be better than your competitors, let's say at ArtCenter?
No. I was
at
UCLA. I was insecure about the real world, like not graduating, because I knew nothing about the art world.
Right.
I was insecure about that, and I just wish I would have been more. I wish I would have had a different take on it, so that I could have had more fun, and just go along with the process. Which it ended up being like that. It ended up being really fun and a lot of support,
Okay, so the last question, and after that, I'm just gonna wrap it up like in 2 minutes. Go to 2 minutes over the limit here. Not that they're gonna pay you more money, but whatever. So what advice would you give? And I know over the last 30 years, so this is something you don't promote, but over the last 30 years, you've always mentored like aspiring artists. I'm not gonna say young artists because they could be a little bit older, but they wanna have a gallery, or they wanna have whatever, a show. So what advice would you give aspiring artists, or anybody in any field, like some of our students who want to be architects or want to be this and that, sort of earlier in their careers or their life?
Well, to everyone that I meet, whether they're actors or architects or artists, is that they have to make that their world, because like everything that I do revolves around art. Like the people that I go out to lunch, go out to dinner with, hang out, everything revolves around art, everything. So everything has to revolve around your field, so you get the most out of it. And you have to give it you have to give it your all. So whatever that means to you, like you have to give it 100%. You have to give it your all. So in order to get the results that you want.
So to like immerse yourself in that, and then also sacrifice like the social life, because I know you've said that to a lot of, my son included, like when kids are in college, or not kids because they're not kids, but young people are in college, or you could be a little bit older in college, but like be able to sacrifice the social life so you can focus on your studies, you know, so you can
Well,
focus
when
on
you're in
what's important.
school, yeah, you know, you forget your social life. It's all school.
Mhm.
You can party when you get out of school. Like if you have a social life while you're in school, then you're not giving it 100%. I'm sorry. When I was at Art Center, I had no life. I had no life. I mean, no social life. It was pure school, 100% of the time, pure school. So even now with my art is, you know, this is my third solo show within a year and a half.
In New York.
That's not easy to do. And that's only because because I have a gallery that supports me. But aside from that, I have many things I can draw upon. And because I have many things I can draw upon, because I'm constantly putting my attention to that, like 24/7. You know, I go to sleep thinking about, how am I going to make that painting work? And for me, it's something that I want to do that. I enjoy doing that. I love what the art brings to me, you know.
Well, thank you for those responses. So I just want to conclude here, and everything that I do, I always dedicate to my family, my wife Antonia, my son Joaquin, and then Salo, now that he's newly wed, Ana, and our siblings and our whole familia. But in particular, our brother Noel,